Emily Tubman was probably one of the most outstanding women in Augusta in the 19th century. She was a product of Southern upbringing, but was really no belle.
Emily Harvie Thomas was born in 1794 in Hanover County, Virginia. Her life extended from the time of George Washington through the Civil War and Reconstruction.
Emily was from an old Virginia established family. Her mother was of the Childs family. Her father was the first land registrar of Kentucky. He died in 1803 when she was only 8 years old. And so her mother was left with 5 children.
When she came to Augusta, she came to be in a wedding from Frankfort, Kentucky on horseback. And while here, she met Richard Tubman.
Richard Tubman was 28 years her senior, but the two were well suited. He made his fortune exporting cotton, tobacco, and indigo. When he died 18 years later, Emily found herself responsible for a large estate.
A little concerned when her husband first died that she wouldn't really know how to operate. She was astute enough that she became not only a philanthropist but a good businesswoman, and she considerably improved on the nice estate that she had been left.
He left her as the sole executrix of his fortune and called her my beloved wife.
Her husband was very wealthy in a large plantation and slave owner, but made provisions in his will to free his slaves, and she found that that was impossible to do under the laws of Georgia at the time. So that's why she got interested in the Colonization Society and came up with a way to allow them to become free.
Emily summoned her brother, a graduate of Yale, to train her in the basics of civil law. In his will, Richard Tubman had left a gift of $10,000 to the University of Georgia on the condition that his estate free all of his slaves. The legislature refused to accept this gift that would allow freed slaves to live in Georgia. With that option gone, Emily began to investigate places where she might help her slaves settle.
He wanted the slaves to be freed. So she had a fight on her hands getting that done. But she gave them a choice of either staying with her in Augusta or going to Liberia to restart their lives.
So in the letter she refers to them as the Tubman people, and she wanted them to be successful if they went to Liberia, and so she brought agricultural implements, she brought clothing for them, she brought what they needed in order to establish a farming community.
Her slaves had the choice to go and settle in Liberia or continue to work for her in Georgia. Roughly a third chose to go to Liberia, and Emily equipped them fully, arranging their travel and continuing to support them for a time. In Liberia, they took the name of Tubman, and their farming community, Tubman Hill, prospered.
It wasn't just about taking care of slaves, as many paternalists did, but it was about giving them some autonomy and giving them lives of their own.
Emily Tubman was smart enough to realize that the Southern one-crop economy was headed for misfortune. So she invested wisely in railroads and industries and more than doubled the value of her late husband's estate.
She was one of the largest stockholders of the Georgia Railroad, and that was a major business in this part of Georgia and all of Georgia. You know, Atlanta owes its existence to Augusta because of the Georgia Railroad.
Unlike most Confederate fortunes, hers survived the Civil War. In using her wealth, she was guided by the belief that she was only its steward, not its owner.
I think she saw this fortune as given by God, and it was her duty to make it work for the betterment of mankind.
She also could give lessons in the way that the means are distributed. It was not a handout. She often had a few ties to what she gave.
Emily kept no records of her charitable giving, saying it was strictly between her and the Lord. Her faith was simple, direct, and practical. Impatient with the complexities of doctrine and church order in mainstream churches, she was attracted to a young denomination, the Disciples of Christ.
The Christian Church Disciples of Christ had started in the early 1800s as a movement that was intended to go back, as they say, to the Christian Bible and so forth, organized as it was back then, and try to duplicate it as much as possible in the times in which they lived.
One of the things that she did for the church was build the original building on Reynolds Street, and then in 1860 she purchased a home for the minister, James Sanford Lamar, and that building is now the Offices of Historic Augusta.
Emily Tubman was one of the principal benefactors for the Augusta area. She gave generously to help with the buildings and the pastoral expenses of the denomination's churches in Augusta, Atlanta, Savannah, Athens, as well as sites in Kentucky.
She became one of the great philanthropists, not only of Georgia, but of other causes that she believed in Kentucky and other areas.
In Augusta, she provided a number of low-cost housing units for widows and the elderly. She gave land to the ex-slaves who had stayed with her and equipped them to be independent farmers.
She was concerned about girls and whether girls would have an education or not, and so it was very important to her that they did.
As the first public high school for girls in Augusta, the Tubman School went far beyond simply training girls to be household servants. It offered college prep courses in the arts and sciences. And today, the Tubman Middle School in Augusta still bears her name.
She was quite a stimulant to the economy, basically, because she had such great wealth and invested wisely and was able to use it for the good of the community.
Emily Thomas Tubman died in 1885 at the age of 91 after a life of service. Marking the 200th anniversary of her birth, the city of Augusta unveiled a statue at the corner of Green and McIntosh Streets in front of the First Christian Church.
She was an outstanding example of what a 19th century woman could achieve given the opportunity, and she got the opportunity and she took advantage of it.
So her influence, I think, will be lasting a long time. I think so.